Hey friends, emergency video time. Obviously, as I'm sure you're aware by now, we did follow through on striking Iran, 3 nuclear sites. The most difficult one being Fordow. Fordow is a nuclear centrifuge site with under about 300 feet of mountain. And so it'll be interesting to see how this was done. I'm guessing it was a series of these 30,000 pound bombs on top of each other, gutting their way through this mountain. So what I wanted to say, I've kind of shared my opinion. I've kind of stayed away from it. I personally think this is the right call. And as I've said many times, I wish we had a different, team leading it, but the Pentagon is the one carrying this out and executing it. And I'm on Team America when it comes to things like this, even if I disagree with the president on just about everything. But I do think it was the right call. So what I want to do is really just kind of talk to you about what now, because I think there's a lot of people that are nervous. Is this World War III? What's going to happen? Is this a new Iraq? And I want to discuss that because first off, it's very, very different than Iraq. So in Iraq, we were going up against a dictatorship where there was no, alternate government in place, basically, with the stated goal of regime change, and we went in with 200,000 troops. And the presence of U.S. troops, and then ultimately we did something called de-Baathification, which is when we basically fired everybody in the government and rebuilt the government from the ground up. And so now you had a lot of unemployed men particularly, and, services weren't getting done, and a lot of animosity was created, which was a dumb move. In this case, in Iran, look, the Iranian government does not really have the support of most people. In fact, the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, does not get along with the military. And so any kind of regime change would not be implemented by the United States or Israel. It would be done by the Iranians themselves. And, look, if that's the case, that is not our business. And ultimately, that would not be something that we would get sucked into, putting 300,000 troops on the ground. There are times, and obviously with what happened in Afghanistan and Iraq, we get very nervous, as we should be, and we should be cautious. But in reality, military power to compel diplomatic action sometimes is the right thing. And so in this case, we've made it very clear, and I'll talk about that too. Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, and why? The president tried to negotiate, gave them 60 days. They were stalling. And, look, he, again, gave them 60 days. And I think the message, I don't know whether Trump actually delivered this or not, should be like, at the beginning of that, look, you're not going to be able to have a nuclear program, and it's either your choice with incentives or it's our choice with no incentives. So anyway, this has been destroyed, apparently. There's a lot of information to go still. Can the nuclear program be rebuilt? Yes, but many of the scientists were killed. It would take a lot to rebuild this. And then there's a lot of question about how close is Iran to a nuclear weapon. Israel says, weeks. Supposedly Tulsi Gabbard said years, even though she reformed that. Well, here's the thing. We don't know, and we don't know because we don't necessarily know when they want to go to a nuclear weapon. So they have 10 bombs worth of enriched material. We know this because the IAEA has actually seen this and monitored. In fact, the IAEA came out and said that Iran was not in compliance with the IAEA, which is part of what led to Israel jumping on this. So they had 10 bombs worth of uranium enriched to 60%. So to enrich uranium from 0 to 60 takes a long time. From 60 to 90 is a matter of maybe a week. And 90 is weapons-grade uranium. So in theory, if they had decided to go to weapons-grade uranium, they could have done that in a week or 2 weeks. And so, we, hold on, my kid's interrupting us here. So we ended up basically, where was I at? Oh yeah. So 90% then, that's weapons grade. So then the next question is, at what point, how can they deliver that? So it will take some time to develop an explosive device that creates a nuclear mushroom cloud, but it will take no time if they decide to put radioactive material around a traditional bomb, and that's when you have what's called a dirty bomb, which, while it's not a nuclear explosion, it makes areas uninhabitable for hundreds of years. And so the reality is, if the Iranian regime had decided they were going to sprint to a nuclear weapon, they would have gotten there in weeks. And so that's why I think this was the right move again. And also, I'll just say this. Iran has been exporting terror for decades. They are, I think, the worst player by far in the Middle East. And 400 of our fellow Americans were killed by Iran in the Iraq War through these explosive form penetrators, the EFPs, that were being killed, that were killing Americans. I operated against Iranians there. Frustratingly, we usually got called off the targets. But so that's a big concern. And, you know, obviously Hezbollah, Hamas, all, you know, Syria, their alliance with Russia, they've been supplying Russia ballistic missiles and Shahed drones. I can literally say if Iran basically loses its teeth, I think that'll be great for the world and great for the Middle East. But in knowing how they behave, the idea of them having a nuclear weapon is completely unacceptable in my mind. Because if they're willing to do what they've done, they are an unstable regime. And so, again, I'm repeating myself. That's why I think this is the right move. So what are we going to look for finally after this strike? My expectation is, you know, the threat really is that Iran reacts to American troops in the region with these missiles. Now, kind of the interesting point is Israel's attack on Iran has been focused not necessarily on the missiles, but on what they're calling it basically a kill the archer strategy. So let me shut this door here. They're calling it a kill the archer strategy. And so the point is they may have thousands and thousands of missiles, but they don't have thousands and thousands of missile launchers. And so by taking out the launchers, they reduce the amount that Iran can fire. And that's why we've been seeing much smaller volleys go after Israel. So right now is a good time to have U.S. military overhead Iran, all these fighter jets, looking for these launchers, looking for indications that they're launching, take those out. And then now would be the time, once that is reduced and declined, to then go to the Iranians and offer to negotiate an end to this conflict. And there may even be some economic incentives tied to that. But the bottom line is Iran cannot, and evidently now will not, have a nuclear weapon. So, look, I have not changed my view on this president. Don't worry. Probably tomorrow I'll start coming out with more stuff on him. But in this case, I think it's important when you agree with the call. I do. And I know many of you disagree, but hopefully in the hindsight, we can look back and say, okay, that was the right thing. And I think it's important to acknowledge the right thing because it makes our criticism all that much more powerful. Anyway, I wanted to get this out. Curious your thoughts. And again, take a deep breath. This is not going to be World War III. I promise you that. We will wait and see what the reaction of Iran is. But once again, the United States military, bar none, is the best in the world, by far, the best in history. I will rest easy tonight knowing that American pilots and American service members are on watch. So God bless you all. And if anything big happens, I'll do another video. Thanks.